mediatalegón.tv. Grupo de Control. Con Bea Talegón y Carlos Sánchez.
Not stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a day.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. Next thing you'll see is a nuclear bomb in the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches a todos. Bueno, pues ya veis, ¿no? Siempre estamos a una semana de que el malo de turno, Irán o quien sea, pues tenga una bomba nuclear. Esa es la amenaza permanente. Nunca han tenido bombas nucleares, finalmente, ¿no? Ni Irak ni Irán. Pero lo que sí es cierto es que, bueno, pues hay un plan, hay una idea que está previamente diseñada mucho antes de que ocurra el 11S. Benjamin Netanyahu escribía aquel famoso documento, A Clean Break, en el que establecía toda la estrategia sobre Oriente Próximo. Ese documento fue replicado de una manera no literal, pero sí bastante fidedigna, en otro documento que se elaboró en un think tank que se llamó el Proyecto para el Nuevo Siglo Americano, The Project for a New American Century. Y bueno, pues básicamente la estrategia era similar, era igual. Esa era la realidad. Y bueno, pues necesitaba un evento catalizador. Ese evento fue el 11S. Pues claro, a estas alturas de la película, todos sabemos que el 11S muy probablemente no fue lo que nos contaron. Entonces, bueno, pues por eso hoy yo he pedido a mi amigo Piers Robinson que venga, bueno, pues a dar su opinión, porque además, aderezando toda la situación, pues resulta que han salido unos documentos, ¿no? Los documentos de Epstein, que lo inundan todo y que sirven, bueno, pues para que cada cual elija los documentos que más le gustan para construir una narrativa. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre unos documentos que han aparecido, pero sobre todo sobre unos documentos que no han aparecido. Todo lo que no está ahí, todo lo que falta por decir, todo lo que falta por contar sobre ese evento catalizador que decía el Project for a New American Century, ¿no? Ese evento que permitiese que se desarrollase toda una estructura de vigilancia sobre los americanos, sobre los extranjeros, y que se desarrollase una estrategia bélica, como decía el señor Wesley Clark, ¿no? Atacar 7 países en 5 años, ¿no? Que estaban Somalia, Sudán, Irán, como guinda del pastel, Irak, Libia, Siria y Líbano. Y ese era básicamente el plan: establecer una dictadura digital, establecer una red de vigilancia de los propios americanos y de todos los extranjeros, mientras se desarrollaba una estrategia bélica que ya vemos las consecuencias que ha tenido, ¿no? En Siria ahora tenemos gobernando prácticamente al-Nusra, al-Jolani ahora rebautizado como al-Shara, con un traje caro y una barba recortada. Nos hacen pasar a un terrorista islamista como un demócrata de toda la vida que viene a liberar Siria, y toda esta narrativa que cada vez es más ridícula y cada vez resulta más evidente, ¿no? Pero claro, hubo gente que empezó allí, empezó cuando hablar de todas estas cosas era ser un peligroso teórico de la conspiración, y ahí estaba Piers Robinson aferrado a la verdad, contando todas estas cuestiones sobre el 11S, ¿no? Piers Robinson nació en 1970, es un investigador y académico británico en el campo de los estudios de medios de comunicación. También es codirector de la Organización para Estudios de la Propaganda y fundador del Grupo de Trabajo sobre Siria, Propaganda y Medios. Es autor de varias publicaciones sobre el efecto CNN, que es una cosa muy interesante sobre la que también le voy a preguntar. Ha recibido pues, muchas críticas por cuestionar el uso de armas químicas en la guerra civil siria. Una de estas narrativas que se construyen para confundir a la gente y que todos pensemos que Bashar al-Assad es muy malo y que hay que quitarlo y hay que acabar con él, que luego resultó ser falso, como la bomba nuclear de Irán, que también ha resultado ser falso, como las armas de destrucción masiva, que también resultaron ser falsos, como los bebés de ese hospital en Kuwait, que resultó ser una narrativa falsa, también creada y que justificó la primera guerra de Irak. ¿Cuántas cosas falsas han servido para justificar guerras reales? Bueno, sobre estas cuestiones seguiremos hablando. Robinson recibió su doctorado en la Universidad de Bristol en 2000 con una tesis titulada Los medios de comunicación y la intervención. Fue profesor de Comunicación Política en la Universidad de Liverpool del 99 al 2005 y profesor titular de Política Internacional en la Universidad de Manchester de 2005 a 2015. Escribió un libro muy interesante, se llama 9/11 Unmasked, una figura escribió la reseña de este libro y bueno, pues ha sido la pieza fundamental de un grupo de presión sobre el 9/11, quizá uno de los autores más prolíficos en este sentido, varios informes sobre todo lo que no nos contaron del 9/11 y bueno, pues ya sin más preámbulos os presento a Piers Robinson. Hi Piers, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well. How are you doing, Carlos?
Very well. I mean, it's been a crazy week, as I said before.
For sure.
Crazy week, yeah, for us. The people's been digging, seeking for the truth for all these years. Well, it should be a good moment for us, but still, it seems like, people is reluctant to understand how big the narrative is and how deep the roots of this narrative are, right?
Mm.
So, well, we are busy. I hope I guess you're busy too, trying to explain all this.
Yeah. The workload isn't going down. As you say, this should be in some ways with the Epstein files and now with the war against Iran, it should be a "I told you so" moment for all of us who have been warning Western publics for a long time about all of this. But also what I'm seeing is there are a lot of people who don't know any of this. It's one of the frustrating things I've experienced over the last week is having to listen to exactly the same arguments we've heard time and time again over Syria, Libya, Iraq, of course, and Afghanistan. And you hear sort of a new generation of younger journalists and politicians coming in, making these same erroneous arguments and making them without demonstrating any knowledge or understanding of Iraq or Afghanistan, of the death tolls associated with those wars, why regime change wars are a bad idea, why they're not really about bringing democracy, but about projection of Western power. So we have a new generation of people who are into these positions of power who need to be educated about the reality of the world. But I think, as you intimated at the start, although this is an incredibly dangerous moment that we're in now, I think for the world, I think there's a lot of hope. We should be optimistic. This is an opportunity for seeing potentially an end to Western belligerence, an end to Israel's actions in the Middle East, and have to be a little bit hopeful that that's going to be the case. And then along with that, this is an opportunity to remind people that these wars have been written in stone for a long time. They've been planned for a long time. And we've had the genocide against the Palestinians, public awareness, global awareness as to the nature of Israel and the actions of that government is at higher levels than ever before. So this is it's an opportunity. It's a learning moment potentially for a lot of people, and a lot of people in the West to realize the problems that we've had since 9/11 with the deep state, with nefarious wars being fought. And, with that opportunity comes a possibility, I think, for mobilization. Now, whether that will come, I don't know. I'm just saying there's an opportunity here. However bleak things are at the moment, there's an opportunity for that. And I'll stop in a second. But, before we got to this week, which, as you said, has been a pretty frantic week for everyone, we had this unraveling of the Epstein files information, partly because of Thomas Massey's, Representative Thomas Massey's actions in the US government to get these files released. And of course, for anyone in the know, anyone who's been following the work of Whitney Webb, for example, we've known for a long time the nature of Epstein and his, this is essentially a blackmail political control operation which has been going on. But he had incredible exposure of what's been going on just before this war against Iran kicked off all of a sudden. Perhaps it's not a coincidence there.
No.
And that kind of level of public awareness in the US, at least, as to quite how corrupt and nefarious the political establishments have become, I think is at levels which are very high now. And I'm hopeful that this isn't going to go away. People are going to, now that they have seen what has been going on with the sexual blackmail, with the rape of children as well, and various other activities going on, which are almost too terrible to mention. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. And I think as we go through this conflict situation with Iran, that issue is going to remain there. And again, these are pressure points which we, people like you and I and others who have been speaking truth to power for a long time, these are pressure points which I think we can take advantage of in order to try and build an even bigger constituency amongst our populations who are aware that we've got a very big problem and it's time for a change.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Well, at the beginning, I described the path from the very initial moment of the narrative, which, in my opinion, is when, well, in my opinion, the initial moment of this is when Isaac Rabin got killed, right? And in my opinion, and in Israel, sociologically, well, the will of the Israelis started to move from, well, more labor type of positions to the revisionists, the Zionism, which is, well, more belligerent against the Arabs. Well, when Rabin got killed, well, Netanyahu won the election in '96, and well, he destroyed basically the Oslo agreements, and he wrote a piece called, well, a piece like a plan, a strategy called the Clean Break. In my opinion, this strategy sounds very similar to the project from the New American Century, which is, well, I don't know who's actually inspiring who, but it looks like the same, is it? And in the project from the
certainly a synergy. Right.
Yeah, it's certainly a synergy, right? And in the project from the New American Century, they speak clearly about the need of a trigger for well, this strategy to be deployed, right? And it seems like this 9/11 event was the trigger, the needed trigger, like the Pearl Harbor of our age, right? So, yeah, these last 2 weeks, we've seen some interesting documents appearing in the Epstein database that, well, point at 9/11. So I'm quite sure that you've been digging on that. And well, what is your point? I have many documents here if you need or you want me to find them. But yeah.
Well, I think on the Epstein, of course, one of the first things which came out was this email referring to the invitation of Ghislaine Epstein, I think, Ghislaine Maxwell, to this shadow 9/11 commission. And that was one of the first sort of documents which caused some people to prick up their ears. It's not entirely clear exactly what that was supposed to be about. The character Epstein who was inviting is not Epstein. This is somebody else. And yeah, the suggestion was that there, some kind of shadow 9/11 commission. Now, personally, I don't know quite what to read into that at the moment. I don't think we have enough information, or at least I haven't seen enough information on this. One possibility here is that you had a group of people who were considering developing a kind of a narrative building exercise in case the 9/11 Commission started to, as it were, reveal more truth than they wanted it to. There's always worth, keeping in mind that, governments and the deep state don't have complete control. So there might have been a concern that what if the 9/11 Commission gets a little bit closer to the truth than we want it to, so we better have our own shadow commission going on. That's one possibility. Another interpretation of this could be this is just a code for a group of people with interests or with connections with 9/11 to exchange information in order to prepare for any potential kind of problematic PR issues which might arise. And I think that's one of the other things which has been circulating a lot is this Lutnick, who's Secretary of Commerce now in the Trump administration, and of course he was he had lots of connections with Epstein, and he was obviously on 9/11. He was the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, and his entire company, as it were, was killed in the North Tower. He just happened not to be there. He gave various sort of, as some people have been pointing out in the post Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk era, that his emotion didn't seem to be terribly authentic. And so that has sort of, been one of the kind of Epstein-linked things which has come out. And, again, this point about sort of elites who were involved or connected with 9/11 needing to prepare for the possibility of people not believing you, or of, as it were, the narrative control breaking down, needing to prepare, that might be what's behind this shadow 9/11 Commission group, which, as again, I haven't had time to look into it more than I've just seen on social media. So who knows exactly what is going on there. I do think the Lutnick issue, and of course the other aspect of Epstein is his financial dealings, and so of course his relationship with Noam Chomsky, for example, which is another thing which has been revealed.
That's heartbreaking, right? Because you've been writing consistently about the media and about manufacturing consent, and this is your field of expertise.
Let's come back to Chomsky, because I've got a few personal stories on Chomsky.
Okay, good.
But I was making this point about this. Epstein was obviously involved in the finance world in a very significant way, and of course one of the major issues with 9/11 is the put options, the bets which were put on the stocks of the airlines, United Airlines and American Airlines, going down at 9/11. And it's been long known that there were people making these trades. The 9/11 Commission even acknowledged that there were people making trades, that there was informed trading going on, confirming foreknowledge of 9/11, that 9/11 was about to happen. And of course, the 9/11 Commission came out of this line that is in the person who we have identified could not in any possible way be connected to Al Qaeda. So therefore, we haven't investigated, which of course only begs the question of, was Al Qaeda involved at all in 9/11? And so this question of the finance issues, and this is where Lutnick comes in, and so on, and Epstein. I think most people are sitting looking at all these Epstein files coming out. Some people have argued that there's a dearth of file releases around the 9/11 period. Yeah. Other people are pointing out, because there was this kind of financial component to the 9/11 crimes, it seems almost 100% that Epstein must have had some kind of knowledge or involvement in that. Maybe he's one of these people making the trades. There's a big thing here to find, and it might be, and my understanding is that only 3% of all the Epstein files have been released so far. And somewhere in that other 97% of the files, you're going to find some smoking gun evidence of 9/11 foreknowledge, and that's about as much as I know about Epstein and the 9/11 issue. And we're going to have to see what pressure is brought to bear on more releases. There are a lot of people spending a lot of time scrutinizing the material coming out, so it might throw up the smoking gun. And for sure, the put options issue on 9/11 is a big one. I mean, this thing of informed trading is confirmed. There's no disputing that it was going on. So you want to know who these people were, who had the knowledge, the information to place those bets on the shares going down, the values going down for the airlines involved in 9/11.
There is also something which is very interesting, which is as I pointed, this is Ed Epstein, which is the brother of Jeffrey Epstein, and the email was sent by Ghislaine Maxwell, which is Robert Maxwell's daughter, and who, if there's someone still that doesn't know who is Robert Maxwell, which was a Mossad asset or a Mossad agent. I mean, it's quite evident, obvious.
That's known and accepted now, I think.
I think this is like common knowledge already, no? But the thing is, it looks like there's a family matter in this, right? Like you have Ed Epstein, you have Jeffrey Epstein involved, you have Ghislaine Maxwell, probably Christine Maxwell as well, and all Robert Maxwell descendants were involved probably on this. It looks like this family has been really busy around this thing. One of the things that are very suspicious as well, there is a gap in the series when you see the numbers of the documents, numbers and everything. There is a big gap, especially on this moments, right? Like for example, from 1990, there's a gap in 1999 and 21. Many series are lacking. So, what's your point?
That's certainly what some people are reporting, that there is a very big gap. I don't think, by the way, that Ed Epstein is a familial relation to Jeffrey Epstein. He's a separate.
No.
Yeah, my understanding that's separate. He's an American investigative journalist.
Okay. I thought it was his brother. Thanks for pointing at this, because
but certainly for sure, the question has been raised about, or some people have argued that there is evidence of a clear gap in. There's been a predominance of documents for that period have not been released. So there's something going on there. I appear to be not releasing documents around for the year before, the year after 9/11. Now, I haven't seen confirmation of that yet. However, what I would say is that, I'm pretty sure that we're at 3% of the documents having been released so far. So that means there's an awful lot of documents out there on Epstein which need to get it properly, fully exposed to the public. And again, given who we know Epstein was, and given his relationship as well in terms of the finance world, the probability that he was linked, knowing, etc., about 9/11 is extremely high. So, it's going to be worth digging and pushing for release of those, because it might produce a smoking gun, right? Because this is the point about the informed trading on 9/11, is that in a way that is basically a smoking gun. You've got people who are making these trades, who know what is about to happen, and so therefore you're immediately into this, away from the official story of it was just these Islamic fundamentalist terrorists based in a cave in Afghanistan who were planning this. No. This is an event which is people know about and know it's about to occur, and those people are, as it were, high up in the US political power or economic structure. So it immediately refutes the official narrative on 9/11. But we're going to have to wait and see. If more documents come out. But again, as I said, people are looking very closely into this, and it's the same goes with Charlie Kirk, of course. And Charlie Kirk's murder is looking like an assassination in order to clear away a troublesome, as it were, voice who was challenging American support of Israel. And of course, as we know, he was clear about in his opposition to military action against Iran. So, the kind of echoes of JFK and removal of an inconvenient voice, the troublesome priest, as it were, is very strong. And I think, Candace Owens in America is leading the charge on that investigation. And I think, we might get there on that. And the same goes with Epstein and then with 9/11 in terms of having the really hard, undeniable proof beyond the scientific proof that we already have. That this is a false flag operation. It's a deep state operation which is being carried out.
Yeah, and also you just pointed out the GFK files and how they've been released. Well, in a 60 years gap, there've been many different commissions. Started with the Warren Commission, which is a joke commission because true. And then we had the Church Commission. We have many different commissions. We had a commission last year as well, and still, even if there are many documents that prove like a deep relation between the Mossad and the CIA. Tucker Carlson also pointed at this in his last documentary, which is brilliant as well. So, is beyond of any doubt that there was a relation in the GFK, and there is, in my opinion, beyond of any doubt that there is a connection as well in here. And all these Epstein papers seem to add some more evidence to that close tie between them, right? Look, we have also this, which is also we have also this one, which is very also suspicious. Philip Levin, which was a Miami Beach mayor, sending to Ghislaine Maxwell, where is the real pilot in September the 18th, 7 days later. Where's the real pilot? What real pilot? What do you think? This is what's the connection? What's the connection? Sorry.
No. So go on. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go
on. No. What's the connection between Philip Levin and 9/11? It's not very intuitive relationship. What is your point?
Yeah, where is the real pilot? This is one of the things that we're looking at in the International Center for 9/11 Justice, and we've been carrying out flight simulator studies into the Pentagon flight and into the UA-175. And we'll be publishing that report in hopefully in about 2 or 3 weeks' time. But one of the key findings is that the overall pattern of evidence is that these were automated, that these were not manually flown aeroplanes. This question there of where is the real pilot? I don't want to get too into the weeds of what we think might have been going on board the planes, but we're certainly looking at those planes being automated. That the maneuvers that were flown, and it's not just the kind of difficulty of the maneuvers that were flown, but it followed. You had ultimately this with the North and the South Towers. You had this very incremental lining up of the aircraft so that they came in perpendicular to the face of each building. And the chances of that happening from manual control is infinitesimally small. So this looks like a guidance system which is bringing the aircraft in and maneuvering the planes. That of course throws up all of these questions. If these were automated flights, what was going on? Where were the pilots? Had the pilots been killed? Were these drones? All of these arguments or questions which circulate out in the broader kind of 9/11 truth community about the planes are things which we are still to get fully nailed down. But at the moment, I mean, I can say with some confidence, having been researching it for a year, that the evidence that these were automated control of these planes is strong. That it's the pattern of evidence is not consistent with manual control, basically. So again, but that email there, there's not an awful lot to go on there. So I think we'll just have to wait and see. I think at the moment we want to try to get to the bottom of is it the case that documents related to Epstein between 1999 and 2001, there's this black hole there? Because if that is the case, then that means there's definitely something there. If we can have that fully confirmed, then I think you need to push for those documents to be released, because it might provide, it's a smoking gun for 9/11 in a way that I think the scientific evidence is very clear. You can prove that 9/11 was not as the American government claimed, that the building collapses, the physics and so on. But people often look for kind of this documentary evidence. People who aren't scientists, for example, will look for this. Can we see the paperwork, the planning? Now, of course, any operation like this, they don't file the paperwork for the operation. They destroy it, obviously. There won't be any traces there. But you might find other paper trails which do perform the same function of having that documentary proof. And given how brazen Epstein and all of these people in that circle were, if you look at how they would talk so openly in this, and I know it's a code language they were using, but there's references to murder, there's references to child rape, etc. They're pretty brazen and an overconfident group of people. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were saying things over email about 9/11, which potentially implicates them in the way that they have done over horrific child abuse, child rape, and so on. So I think that that possibility of documentary evidence being in there is strong, and we should be pushing very hard for release of that.
Yeah, but
all of the information.
There is also a point that makes me, well, maybe not so optimistic, which is that as Johnny Vedmore said in this program 2 or 3 weeks ago, he spoke about the flooding the zone, this strategy, which is apparently the strategy they are using. They're flooding the zone with documents. It's very, very, very hard to create, not create connections. It's easy to create connections, but the threads that you can follow are huge. You can follow the thread, the connection, which is the thread I'm following, the connection of Epstein with all these scientists. It connects also with the pandemic preparedness. Let's say it connects with all this, but you have to carefully follow a thread, because the amount of documents is huge, and it looks like, again, the investigators who have a clear idea of what to look and where to look, as yourself following the 9/11 thing, it looks like we still are very, let's say, fringe somehow. And but the real evidence is there, is clear, right? You're speaking about a smoking gun. I mean, in my opinion, these 2 documents we've shown here are very clear, or show very clearly the connection of everything, which connects with all these relationship with Mossad, from years, from generations. How do you feel about that when you try to explain? Do you have the feeling that the people is more open to listen to this kind of stuff, or still it's getting harder?
No. Look, of course, this problem of flooding the zone, and this is one of the strategies which is frequently employed, and so that is a problem. But I'd also say that we have a level of transparency and information coming out on many issues which I haven't seen in earlier parts of my life. And I also think that we have a larger part of the population, and some of this is because of things like COVID. But Epstein is very important on this front in terms of waking people up, because a lot of the population don't care about wars and what happens to other people. It's unfortunate, but a lot of people don't. People did care with COVID-19 because their own lives were being affected. Yeah. And so that woke a lot more people up than we could ever wake up over in the anti-war movement. With Epstein, when you're talking about elite pedophilia, which is essentially, that was the mechanism by which the blackmail and the political control was being operated, that there is nothing that activates and angers the public more than elite involvement in pedophilia. So I think that now that can of worms has been opened and shown to potentially all of the public, you're going to have a lot more people who are open. And you also, and this is responding to the flooding the zone problem, is that you've got a lot more people sifting through this information now. And I suspect it won't go away, short of some epic scale false flag structural deep event that they might pull off, alien invasion, meteorite strike or something. I think they're stuck with increasingly or perilously weak narratives which have been promoted to maintain these power structures for a very long time. And so, I mean, I think there's every reason to be hopeful that enough people will engage, will go through all the information, and that awareness will continue to increase about political corruption. Now, of course, that's I'm being optimistic there. I'm just trying to say that there is reason to be positive that it's going in the right direction. Again, in terms of my experience of working in these areas, having started off as a reasonably well-behaved academic, researching the things I was supposed to be researching and so on, and working within the kind of acceptable parameters, I've become obviously more and more critical over the years. But as part of going through that process, I've also become aware of more people being aware of the problems that people like you and I talk about. For example, more people talk about propaganda than they did 5 years ago or 6 years ago in Western democracies. With the current war against Iran, you've already got some, notable people voicing dissent within the elite power structures. So I think a colleague of mine, David Miller, was just talking about a Sky News interview with a British military commander, retired, who was being very clear about his opposition to the war in Iran. So I think we are in a stronger place now than we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. Of course, we don't know where this is all going to go, and maybe these things they will close down. Maybe we will get closed down again. Maybe the alternative independent spaces will get sort of censored to death, strangled. And maybe, as I say, maybe events will overtake us and there'll be new false flags. Maybe they'll get a degree of control of the population through AI and all of those technologies which are bubbling under or coming to the fore now. Maybe they can get more control, but then maybe not.
It's a good opportunity,
we just
right?
Keep fighting.
Yeah, there's a great opportunity, at least to make our points clear. One of the things, I mean, I think that you probably watched the Tucker Carlson documentary, which also was claiming some of the points you made for many years about the physics of the collapse of these buildings, which is in my opinion very clear that it was a demolished, a controlled demolition. It also making great points about the World Trade Center 7, the 7 building, because he pointed out some interesting offices in there, which clandestine CIA station, right in the 25th floor. So many records could have been destroyed in there. Also, the New York field office of the U.S. Secret Service in the floors 9 and 10. Also, Department of Defense Office, 25th floor, the New York City Office of Emergency Management, the floors 9 and 10 as well, International Revenue Service, Security and Exchange Commission Office, is Salomon Brothers, and some other investment banks offices. Well, that's also a smoking gun, or what?
Yeah, look, I agree that when you look at the totality of evidence regarding 9/11, and both the contextual, circumstantial evidence, some of which you've just been describing, but also the physics of the building collapses, and now increasingly what we understand about the flights and the impossibility of them having been manually flown. I think, you are at this point where, to any objective observer, if you were to put this information in front of them, they'd agree, yeah, this is a false flag operation which has occurred. The only thing which has stopped that for so long is the propaganda machine we're up against. I mean, it's a well-rehearsed story, isn't it? We know that anyone who questions power, you get accused of being a conspiracy theorist. You're then smeared and attacked, and sometimes people are killed as well. People are silenced, and this happened in a big way in relation to the JFK assassination for sure. And so we know that you're up against, a very powerful propaganda machine to try and keep this awareness, keep these facts out of people's out away from being in front of people's eyes. But I think, things such, and the building 7, WTC 7, is a very good example. I mean, this building collapsing at free fall, 5 hours, not hit by a plane, that's back in circulation on social media. People are seeing that, and anyone objectively looking at that will say that building is being, it's a controlled demolition that I'm looking at.
That's clear.
And it's clear. And so I think these kind of very strong pieces of evidence do ultimately push through. I mean, there's almost a sense, and also I work with International Center for 9/11 Justice now, and of course, getting awareness about the building collapses is one of the key priorities of the organization. But there's almost been a sense in the last year that certainly with a lot of the independent alternative media is but we know this. Everybody knows this, that this building was deliberately put. Jimmy Dore has been saying this for a year and a half now. That has, and of course it hasn't been accepted where it matters in terms of the elite and within the universities and the mainstream media. But amongst the population at large, I think a lot of people are aware of that, and that will continue to grow. So I think that and a lot of the other evidence of 9/11 will coalesce in the minds of a lot of people throughout the population. I think that the current war against Iran, because, again, for people who are in the know or who have studied these things for years, we know that 9/11 was the false flag operation designed to start the wars. And as Wesley Clark blurted out in 2006 or 2007, the aim was always to end up attacking Iran. This is part of the objective. So I think with Iran now sort of center of attention, potentially a major war in the Middle East, and which draws in Russia and China potentially, this is going to focus everyone's minds. And of course, people will be very concerned about the day-to-day of this war. How is it? Where is it going? Are we going? Is Israel and America going to win, or is Iran going to win? Who knows where it's going to go? People will be focused on that. But as soon as they start to step back and see this larger backdrop, and they see Wesley Clark's 7 countries in 5 years, they see the Chilcot report in the UK, which showed the conversations between Bush and Blair talking about regime change. I think that will. I'm hopeful that will continue to, as it were, push into the collective consciousness of people in the West. And we're not going to be having to, make these arguments about Building 7 in, say, 10 years' time. I think they're going to be much more generally accepted. So, and again, going back to Iran, I think we're at this endpoint now, right? We're of that war strategy, which 9/11 was designed to get going. Israel has carried out a genocide against the Palestinians. No one is going to forget that globally anytime soon. Yeah, that's going to be at the forefront of many people's minds for over the next 5-10 years. Iran, if Iran manages to stand its ground and doesn't fall, and if America and Israel have to back down, that could be a very major moment for, as it were, the Western Empire, and a very big opportunity for all of us who have been challenging this and trying to point out what's been going on to be vindicated. I'm not saying everything's going to come to an end then, because we have other problems to do with, technocracy, and we have problems with global capitalism, which are there in terms of waiting in the wings, I think, which are going to be a challenge to the freedom.
Even profiting, right? For example, all these relation with technocracies, profiting all these war scenarios to develop new tools. No, like for example, in 9/11, from 9/11, we've seen how not only the strategy in the Middle East was deployed, also the strategy and social vigilance and security structures like such as, for example, Stellar Wind. Stellar Wind was a program that was previous to the 9/11, and because of 9/11, they had the opportunity to develop some laws to justify a structure that was previously created, right? Like the Patriot Act came after the Stellar Wind program, which was a reality already, and all this total information awareness that was created, and then they developed a live log, and after that we had all this panopticon, the digital panopticon, on which we are just giving our data to all these structures previously created of social control. So it looks like now some other figures like such as Peter Thiel, and they're developing the new a new, let's say, new stage on this social vigilance, thanks to these war scenarios. No, they've been trying, or they've been perfectioning the Where's Daddy software, Lavender software, the Gospel software. Now they're using them in a civil environments like the ICE crisis in the US. It looks like they always profit what happens to develop new tools, and most of public is not aware. So it looks like when we're still describing what happened 20 years ago, they are like 10 years forward. So that's frightening.
Yeah, I think we do have to be on our guard. I mean, I'm one of these people who argues that we have a battle against war and imperialism, and it's real, and we need to fight that. But I also recognize that we have battles against other powerful actors linked with those who are fueling the wars. But whether you call it the global oligarchy, but these elite groups who have significant capacity in terms of resources, and who are sort of possibly ideologically cohesive in terms of belief in capitalism, belief in technocracy, and so on. I think that we have to be very aware that they're still there, and I think COVID is a good wake up on that, because we saw some of the kind of dreams, in inverted commas, that some of these elites had about sort of digitized society, having your injections every 6 months, social control, credit, etc. All of those mechanisms of basically control over populations. I think those technologies are there, they're advancing, and we still live in a world where, whether you're in China, Russia, or the West, you have elites, and elites like to get control, and they like to get control over us, the people. So, for sure, this is, we might be able to get ourselves beyond Western imperialism, which will be no small thing in and of itself. Western wars have caused immense suffering and throughout the course of the 20th century, but certainly the latter part of the 20th century. So bringing that to an end, if we can, will be good. It'll be good for people. But we've certainly got we'll have other fights to fight when that is done, without a doubt. And I agree entirely with you that there's a linkage as well, that these actors will be trying to take advantage of events in the Middle East, for example, in order to try and push forward their agendas. So.
True. Look, I wanted to ask you a bit about Iran, which is also hard to do comments because the information is being cut from both sides of the war, right? Because there's a strong censorship at the moment in Israel. It's hard to know what's happening, and there's a even stronger censorship in Iran, which is makes our work very difficult to be done. But you pointed at Wesley Clark, and probably many people who's watching us at the moment know who Wesley Clark is, but maybe many other are not aware of who Wesley Clark was. So if you don't mind, I will play his statement, which is very interesting. And for the people who doesn't know who Wesley Clark was and how important was this statement. As you see, general retirado de los Estados Unidos de América, comandante supremo de la Organización Atlántico Norte, de OTAN. Listen carefully to this.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Finish up with Iran. So this is the moment of the agenda we're in, and the same lies, same. So my first question is, probably you've been also disappointed with Trump's decision, because the first mandate of Donald Trump, the first 4 years of his ruling was very different. So I expected something different as well. Are you disappointed, or were you expecting this to happen?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed, in the sense that I think I always said that we'll have to see what Trump does. I never particularly thought he was a reliable looking politician. By any stretch of the imagination. He's one of the oligarchy. It's a bit like Elon Musk and Twitter and X. I don't think these people are inherently trustworthy because of who they are and the positions that they occupy within the power structure. I think that I think I was open-minded to there being a possible different course that Trump would allow for, but that was based upon my assessment that I think that American and Western imperialism, and by extension Israeli plans for the Middle East, were and are going to come up against a brick wall at some point in time. Empires come to an end at some point. And sort of my feeling was that maybe Trump and the people around him will see that this is time for a change. Now, that hasn't happened. It's gone, as I had warned a few years back. Maybe America will just go for it. Maybe the deep state, the permanent war machine is going to just push through to a point that it appears to have done now, where they are going for broke. This is last chance saloon. They've decided to attack Iran. Now, part of me thinks that this is, in some ways, on Trump, it doesn't surprise me or disappoint me. I haven't really thought about it in those terms. I had no great hope in Trump. I thought that there is logically an opportunity for the US elite and for Trump to take America down a different path. They haven't done. But part of me, and I was having this discussion with my partner this morning, part of my feeling at the moment is that maybe it was always going to have to come to this at some point. That maybe it was, there was always going to have to be some kind of major military conflagration, which would lead ultimately to the demonstration of American imperial might is not what it used to be. And the Israeli capacity, Zionist capacity to do what it's been doing to the Palestinians cannot persist forever. And maybe this is the point at which that occurs. And of course, in my mind, coming from Britain, I think of the Suez Crisis. The Suez Crisis was this, epic moment for the British Empire when, Nasser decided to, he wanted the Suez Canal, so he nationalized it. And so Britain, Israel and France hatched a plan to attack Egypt and to retake the canal. And of course, Britain was ultimately humiliated. It was forced to withdraw. And the whole ruse became known to the whole world that, that Israel had been involved in this plot. And it was the end point for the British Empire in the sense that, people in the Foreign Office at that point were saying to, the British government that we don't have the military capability to maintain the empire, that we have to move to decolonization. And that was a turning point. And so the question is, when is that turning point going to be for the Western Empire and for the US? And is this potentially going to be the turning point? Is this what has to happen? A military failure, which becomes an obvious military failure, which then leads to a recalibration and a recalculation by Western elites. So maybe this is something we have to go through, or the other alternative is my colleague Oliver Boyd Barrett, who wrote an article for our Propaganda and Focus magazine just before Christmas. He said that the empire is not going away. That maybe American hegemony is actually going to persist, and he's been very skeptical, as I have been for a number of years, that American power is waning. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe they are now. As you said, we have limited information coming out from Israel and in Iran, so it's difficult to make predictions. But I suppose one possibility is that say Iran falls, America gets its way, China and Russia step even further into the background, then you can see, well, maybe the neocons have achieved their 21st century dominance. Possible. Or this could be the point at which there is a failure. And I don't know. We're sitting here, you and I are sitting, I'm in Berlin, you're in Spain, and we're sitting watching this thinking, what is going to happen next? Yeah. And I don't know. There's a possibility that America could, you could see America backing down and saying, oh, well, we killed Khamenei, we've done a lot of damage to their infrastructure. We won, and call it quits and leave. They did that with Vietnam. I mean, Nixon said he declared victory and said, we're leaving Vietnam now. So they can come out with that. How many people will believe it? I don't know. Israel is a different matter. Israel might want to go nuclear in this if they don't overthrow the Iranian government. So I think they're a wild card in this. But if they are thinking of going down those lines, then they're going to have Turkey and they're going to have Russia and China, and probably a lot of other countries who are going to say, well, it's one thing having major conflagrations and wars in the Middle East, which we can just about maybe manage. But if it's going to go nuclear, then really this is something which is not going to be in anyone's interest. So they might start to exert pressure.
Not even Israeli, not even from, that's a suicidal suicidal strategy if they decide to go nuclear. Well, it's a very small country, and surrounded by many other countries that just hate them. Like,
it probably, I agree,
hate
it probably would be, but that doesn't mean, we're talking about these kind of end of times, this kind of fundamentalism that you see in Zionism, and you see in also in Zionist Christianity, this belief in
the Armageddon, like the apocalypse.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's
thing.
what is in their minds. This might not be a problem for them, which is concerning, obviously.
Yes, very.
But I think, but I do think, look, trying to look at this objectively. Look, when they went into Afghanistan, they were working in cooperation with the Northern Alliance. They had people on the ground. When they invaded Iraq, that was after they'd bombed Iraq back to the Stone Ages in Gulf War I, sanctioned it for 13 years, and then invaded. So, it's a very weakened country. Syria, it took 14 years of a covert operation supporting extremists before they finally overthrew the Assad government. Iran is an intact, strong, well-defended country. So I think militarily, unless they have some kind of infiltration in the country which can cause an overthrow, I think they have their work cut out for them. Militarily, I could easily be persuaded that this could be a failure moment for the West.
Yes.
And then by extension Israel as well. It's kicking off in the Lebanon. Hezbollah are still active. Think of all the firepower thrown at Hamas and Gaza. Hezbollah is still there. Hamas is still there. Yemen is still sitting there, with control over a significant, potentially part of the shipping coming out of the Middle East.
Yeah.
These are all things which they can't control with however many aircraft carriers they put into the region, however many B-2 bombers they fly over. They can't get control over that extent of opposition. So maybe it's going to be a failure. I don't know. I think everyone is chastened after Syria because, everyone was taken aback at how successful the overthrow operation in last year in Syria was.
Well, yeah, but it took them 14 years. It wasn't something that happened from one day to another. That's what
exactly.
Trump's claiming, right? So that they've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and you made a very interesting point. Well, let me just make a position, because we're speaking about here the Zionist fundamentalism, which is not something that we're making up. There's a prophecy, the red cow prophecy, which is a crazy thing. Please investigate about that, because they killed the 10th red cow, like pure red cow, which for the Zionists, not the Zionists, for the Jewish or bad understand Jewish tradition, is like the prelude of the apocalypse, which is a crazy thing, but it's there. So that's something very interesting. But you made a very interesting point, comparing the situation with the Suez crisis, on which the British Empire, shown weakness, and now it looks kind of the same, because it looks like Trump is trying to sell as a victory like mediocre results, and also because there's no inner coherence between, for example, the document in the national security strategy that was published in November 25, and what is happening now. No, their aim was, no, we are taking care of our hemisphere, and we have nothing to do there in the Middle East. We have nothing to win, which is actually right. There's nothing to win in there, but maybe pushing China out of there, or just like molesting rivals, but there's nothing to win in there. And 5 months later, they decide to strike on Iran, which is, it looks like also China and Russia are like just looking They're sending some military. They're helping with the intelligence and just letting the U.S. to just crash and collapse, which is also a very interesting strategy. So you're making a very, very interesting point because, as you said, this might be the turning point of the 21st century to see who's going to be the hegemon, right? And it's very interesting the point you made.
Yeah, we're just going to have to sit tight. Sit tight and wait and see. I mean, it's probably not a good idea to focus in on very specific incidents, but I mean, the fact that America felt that it needed to sink an Iranian warship, which I understand was unarmed and was sailing out as just some kind of international naval festival meeting, and they sank this thing, which was defenseless basically, and that that is not a good demonstration of American prowess. No, certainly not a good demonstration of American morality to the rest of the world. But just in terms of its strategic strength, that it elected to do that, and the submarine commander said yes, and he followed the orders. I mean, submarine commanders don't always follow orders. My understanding is that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Russian sub-commander didn't follow an order because they realized it was the wrong thing to do. So, that's a sign of, to me, that's a sign of weakness. I mean, at the moment, as you say, it's difficult to know for sure what's going on, but it does seem that they did hit a girls' school in Iran. That's
crazy.
And so, so that's 140, precious children who have been killed. And, that doesn't look like American power, or, it's not impressive from a military point of view. And if it is the case that Iran has been able to take out, as I was hearing one analyst saying, 40% of American radar capability in the Middle East, if they are able to hit Israel without a significant number of missiles being intercepted, then I think America and Israel are looking weak.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know. I mean, this is one of the problems we have in these situations. It's difficult to know exactly what's going on. We don't know how far there might be penetration of Iran and so on. Just no idea. Or if they have tricks up their sleeves, are they willing to deploy weapon systems which they haven't deployed before, for example? I don't know. So we're going to have to see. All we know is this is, maybe another way. There are three options maybe for the viewers. Okay, this could end up in a strategic failure for the West, in which case, this is a turn for the empire, or America could win, in which case American hegemony isn't going away anytime soon, or this might just get fudged and it will carry on without a clear outcome. Now, that doesn't seem to be too likely at the moment because it's become a zero-sum game for everybody involved and also for Israel. Yeah. But maybe it will. Maybe they will just manage to fudge this and just carry on to revert to, okay, well, we'll go back to negotiations.
Wow.
I mean, you would have thought that Iran would just say no at that point.
Yeah, well, what's the point? Every time that we see
the point about Russia and China might be thinking, well, let America bleed itself out over a period of time and Israel on this. Or, as others are pointing out, maybe Russia and China are closer to Israel than they are to Iran, for various reasons. Again, it's difficult to know for sure because in these situations where you have systemic change in the international system, a move from a sort of a bipolar to a unipolar to a multipolar potentially scenario.
True. And also
India's deals. Sorry.
Also, India's position is creating a lot of confusion, right? Like Modi has been really close to Israel, and you can't see the BRICS as a collective. I mean, it's like just a group of interests, but not like NATO in terms of military strategical position. No, so that creates a lot of confusion also to do analyze this, right?
Yeah, I mean, BRICS is always, for me, is always a little bit of a red herring because the realist analysis of international politics would be you'll have, if one power is dominating, other powers will form alliances and will balance over time. And this is a story of history, essentially. And so it won't be BRICS, it won't be this new sort of entity which is created, but you will see alliances forming between states out of convenience and out of self-interest in order to balance against the West. And so you could well be seeing sort of India is going down one particular road at the moment, China and Russia going down another particular road. But ultimately, the realist argument would be that at some point the balancing will come into play. But BRICS is going to have nothing to do with that. BRICS is just it's an alliance and it's trade-based entity. And what we're seeing at the moment, as you say, India has clearly aligned itself with the Western power bloc in the international system. China and Russia are standing to one side. Russia's involved in a direct conflict with the Western power bloc over Ukraine, obviously. That's not a small war. And China is sitting there, probably, confident that because of the size of its population and the potential in the next 50 years, it's going to be the dominant player in the 21st century at some point. So why don't you just, for now, wait and allow America to self-implode, as it were, and to run into the ground, and you don't have to do anything, is what they might be calculating at the moment. But who knows? Again, the point we made earlier about if this thing becomes bigger, if the nuclear component comes in, and then if the impact on the global economy because of the disruption to oil becomes more of a factor, you might see Russia and China starting to exert themselves more into the game than we have done so far. But fluid, and who knows which way it's going to go. Not very satisfying. But, maybe we have to accept that we are, sometimes we are in those kind of situations where it's not clear where this is going to end up.
Yeah, well, we have to accept where we are, and also we are to accept that we are in Europe, and Europe has nothing to win in this scenario, just to pay, which is a very, very sad and a pathetic position. And look, Piers, I don't want to make it really, really long because let's say frightens the public. So I will ask you to please come again. It's been very, very interesting. So interesting, or always interesting listening to you. And I want to thank you for being here again, and for sharing your experience and your work with our audience. And I'm quite sure that people who's watching us at the moment are also very pleased with the depth of your analysis. And I think, I don't know, maybe we're not sorting out anything, but at least we have we won't die stupid, probably, at least. So thanks, Piers, for being here.
Thanks. It's been good talking to you, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, the same. The admiration and love is mutual. So thanks for being here, and I wish you the best. I'll see you soon, please, Piers. Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Grupo de Control. Con Bea Talegón y Carlos Sánchez.